Alright, so this is what we have as a raw shaft. It's not bad. I mean, I could tweak it some more a little bit, but it's fairly straight from what we started with. And I was able to sand both sides pretty evenly. And this is the start. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put knocks on both ends. One knock will be longer for the arrowhead or whatever point you're going to put on, and then the other will be a little shorter, and that's just the seat for putting it in the bowstring. So yeah, I can sand this down a little bit, and you just kind of tweak it as you go. And then yeah, this will be pretty good. This will work all right. Okay, now we're going to put knocks in our arrows shafts, and there's a trick that I learned from the late Ron Hood. Feel free to look him up. He's got a great series of bushcrafting and survival videos that are out there. Really good stuff. And he showed how to cut using knocks into the ends of your arrow shaft so that you can seat it into the bowstring, and then you can also seat in or haft in your arrowheads. So what we want to do is kind of a ways from the tip here, from the end, about 2 inches, 2-3 inches from the end. I want to start to put a little divot in here with my tool and just round it out like this. Just want to bore this in there on one side. Now 180 degrees from that, on the opposite end, I want to do the same thing on the opposite side. Exactly 180 degrees on the opposite side. So I want to get that going. So what we have is we have 2 holes on the opposite side like that, or 2 divots. Then 90 degrees from where we put our holes here, the holes are here and here, I want to go up about 1/4 inch or so, and then cut in a divot or a wedge. Like so. I don't want to go all the way through. Just want to put a good enough slice in. Then I like to roll to the other, to 180 degrees from that. And cut little wedges in. Make sure that they're there. Okay, so we essentially have this configuration. So we have divots 180 degrees from themselves, and then 90 degrees from the divots we have these little slices or wedges, which are 180 degrees from themselves. And then what I want to start to do is actually another trick that I like to do is from the divots to the wedges, I like to cut a little groove in. This will help guide. This will help guide us a bit. Okay, and then I do the opposite end. Like that. This is a little extra that I found, kind of helps to make a guide. So this is what you end up what it looks like if it shows up on camera. All right. So this is your configuration, and then what I want to start to do is just gently start to work the fibers up and down at the wedges. Kind of break them away. And then at the divots, I want to start working at them kind of gently but firmly. You can start to hear it give. Gently but firmly. And then work up and down. And you're just trying to work the piece loose. gently but firmly. And if you do it correctly, you end up having this, which is what we want. Okay, it's a little thin, but we can work it out. We can sand it and shape it a little better. So this is our first notch. So that's how you break a notch quick and easy in your shafts. Okay, once we've got our notch cut, what I can then do is start to kind of refine it a little bit with some sandpaper or convenient sidewalk or rough rock from a primitive standpoint. And then what I can do is I can go in here and bend the sandpaper in half, and inside of here refine the ends. So I can continue to sand and refine this up. I may even snip these like a short 1/8 of an inch. They don't this would be for the end of the shaft. So I don't need it terribly deep, but just deep enough so it'll sit into the bowstring. If I was doing this for the arrowhead, it would be a little longer so that my arrow could sit inside of it. Or excuse me, my arrowhead could sit inside of it. Okay, so we're at a point where we can start dressing the shaft, so to speak. I'm going to be shifting to actually adding some fletching to it, which is what I like to do. Is I like to add the fletching first and then add the arrow shafts. But since we just got through putting notches in here, I think I'll just show you what that looks like. So on the arrow that we worked on previous, this has the longer notch in it, and then the shorter one at the other end for seating into the bowstring. Excuse me. This is how and where the arrowhead would sit in here, and that would be used with some pine pitch. What I have here, you put some pine pitch on the arrowhead. You can heat the arrowhead up pretty good, and then smear the pine pitch on here, and then it would seat in here, and then you would wrap sinew or cordage around it. And then it would actually it would bond and set and be one unit with the arrowhead. So that's one way we could do that if we were going completely primitive and traditional with an arrowhead that I nabbed some years ago. And then the other way to do it, which is more modern. Now the thing is as you saw with making these arrows, there's time and energy involved. Napping is the same thing. There's time and energy involved, and many malformed and cracked rocks before you actually get a good piece. If you're not as skilled, if you're more skilled than I am, it's probably less. You waste a lot less rock, but it takes me a lot of rock to go through before I come up with a piece that's usable. But anyways, that's a lot of time, and so therefore you spend that time with an arrow, making an arrow, and putting a tip on it, and you want to try your luck at shooting it at an animal that doesn't want to die at far distances. It's a waste of time and energy, and you quickly get frustrated. So that's why you want to get up close to your prey as possible before you use your primitive tools on them like that, because that's what it is. It took time and energy to do this. So that being said, I mean, it's great to know how to do this in a pinch. And you don't necessarily have to shape a rock to make it into an arrowhead. If any sharp point will just do, as long as it's thin enough and somewhat triangular, you can just glue on the tip of here and it should work for you. So then we go to the more kind of blunt end. So we've got the arrow shaft we worked on, that this end is going to be for the the back of the shaft. And then this end, I've got what we call some glue-on tips here from the archery shop. Okay, so you have a really blunt end, or this is actually technically would be called, I think these are field tips, but this would be something good for birding, for small birds and stuff, because you're really just trying to hit them. And then these more have a bit of a point onto them. and these are really good for target shooting, and you just want to size them for your shaft. And so I would sand this down a little bit, or even just whittle it down a little bit so that these sit on here. So what makes them stay again is the modern equivalent of pine pitch that I have here is basically this hot melt super bonding ferrule type ferrule type. So this is just basically hot glue that you smear on your arrow shaft, and then you stick this on there and it'll bond onto it. And so for the majority of these arrows that I'm going to be making, I'm going to be putting these field tips on it, these glue-ons on here. But I thought it was important to kind of go through how these arrows, how an arrow shaft is set and seated up onto a shaft like so.